Arthur Pendragon and Nevsky are arguably the two strongest cavalry commanders in Rise of Kingdoms, and today I'm gonna be trying to decide which commander is better overall, or which one might be a better choice for you. So if you're interested in cavalry, maybe you want to invest in a Nevsky, maybe you want to invest in an Arthur Pendragon, and you want to know who works better with which commanders, which commander overall might be a better first pickup, and in my opinion, which is the better commander, you want to stick around till the end of the video. Now, to begin with, I think we should start off by going over the strengths of Nevsky. The first thing that Nevsky really does well on his active skill is the fact he's got a really nice debuff. Nevsky's active skill debuff, up to a 45% single target defense reduction, is really good. It's the best defense reduction currently in the game, and it is absolutely meta. There is no better defense reduction in the game right now. So Nevsky's active skill right off the bat, that debuff is nice. His active skill damage, it's a good single target amount, not fully overpowered because he is a slightly older commander, but the debuff does kind of make up for that. The other thing Nevsky really does good is the ridiculous amount of stats he has throughout his kit. He's got 20% health, 20% attack, and 20% march speed on his second skill. He's got more defense on his third skill, plus damage bonuses and reductions, and then he's got an absurd amount of skill damage on his fourth skill. Nevsky's overall kit is really stat heavy, and this makes him a very good primary commander, which means he's going to be quite broad. You can pretty much use Nevsky with any cavalry commander. Nevsky William, Nevsky Zhang Yu, Nevsky Hao Bing, Nevsky Joan, Nevsky with Arthur himself. All those pairings are really fine with Nevsky. Obviously, things like Zhang Yu and William are not the best right now because they're older commanders, but Nevsky's so versatile that he works generally with every single cav commander in the game, and of course, that is going to be a good thing if you want to run him. He's very versatile, very open, and that is nice. His skill damage bonuses are also very good. The fact that he does have access to up to a 60% overall skill damage bonus is nice, and that is going to make him even better for the open field. On top of that, his expertise is relatively good. Whenever he's hit with basic attacks, he has a chance to gain up to 30% more health, and this is overall just going to make him a little bit more tanky and a bit better to run on the open field. In terms of areas where Nevsky can lack, he doesn't have AoE. That's really the biggest thing missing in Nevsky's kit. If he had AoE, he'd be absolutely meta, it'd be insane. But he is a single target commander, which is his biggest downfall in my opinion. The other thing is, while he does have high skill damage, he's not the most overpowered offensive commander. His damage is nice, but there's definitely stronger damage commanders. There's commanders like Joan out there, there's commanders like Dulang, there's a lot of higher, more powerful damage commanders who could outperform Nevsky in that regard. And the other thing that he does have is a pretty big disadvantage for a lot of new Season of Conquest players. He's better in a bigger murder ball. You can see on his active skill that his massive defense reduction, that really good debuff, you need to have at least 3 marches on the field to fully capitalize off that. And that means if you've just hit Season 3 or Season of Conquest, you're not going to have that many marches unless you're like a really big whale. So generally, Nevsky's defense reduction, while it's really amazing, you want to have an already pretty good setup murder ball to justify running a Nevsky in that regard. So Nevsky can be very good in that situation if you have the murder ball because of that debuff, but otherwise his active skill can be relatively average because the defense reduction may only be 15 to 30% if you are the only one hitting the target. Now, of course, in big open field situations, you're probably going to have other people hitting the same target as you, but in those situations where you're the only one, if it's only your 1 or 2 marches doing it, you don't get to fully get the maximum value out of Nevsky's active skill, and that can be a disadvantage for a lot of newer players who have just hit Season 3. Now, that being said, what about Arthur Pendragon? What's really good in Arthur's kit? The first thing, obviously, his AoE is ridiculous. He's got 2,800 direct damage factor in an AoE, which is insanely good. It's right off the bat, more damage than Nevsky's active skill, and it's in an AoE 2-3 targets. Really meta. It's obviously because he's a brand new commander, and that's going to make him stupidly powerful on the field if you're trying to grind a ton of kill points, purely because he does have that AoE. He also does have a ability to do combo attack, which, while that's not very necessary for a lot of newer players, if you are an older player or a whale who does have access to a lot of combo attack emblems or has access to more combo attack commanders, such as Super Tai, you can definitely benefit from Arthur Pendragon's combo damage. Next thing about Arthur, the fact that he's got fairly okay stats when he's a field troop as well can be nice. He does have 20% health and 30% attack, and also 20% march speed. It's literally just Nevsky's second skill, but he has 10% more attack, and it's easier to get his health. The health bonus for Nevsky only when he's outside of territory. For Arthur Pendragon, he gets that health so long as he is an open field troop, which can be quite nice. Other than that, though, he does have a pretty nice thing where he can get up to 30% more skill damage, which is pretty good. And then the other thing is he's got a nice rage reduction. While his active skill does not have a debuff, he does have up to a 200 rage reduction because you're reducing 100 rage every 2 seconds, and you're going to gain an okay amount of march speed whenever you use your active skill. Now, that's not very useful because generally when you use an active skill, you're not going to be running away from someone, so you don't necessarily need the march speed. It can be good for hunting people down, but that happens less on the open field generally. Then again, though, it can be nice for retreating back and forth. It's got its uses, but I think the 30% march speed, not too overpowered there. Nice, but not OP. And his expertise, it just makes his second skill here, or third skill here, where he gets the bonuses, a little bit better. And his expertise is just another insane amount of damage that is adding on to his already pretty absurd amount of open field damage as well. So overall, that is a pretty nice kit for Arthur Pendragon, very damage heavy, got some okay stats, not as tanky as Nevsky, that's definitely quite an open thing there, but that is pretty interesting. The things that are kind of bad about Arthur, while he does have AoE and all that nice stuff, is debuff, rage reduction, not too overpowered nowadays. There are quite a few commanders who do rage reductions already, such as Belisarius Prime, whose whole kit is pretty much built around rage reductions. The other thing that's kind of poor about Arthur Pendragon's kit, he ain't got too much in terms of tankiness. He's, like I said before, nowhere near as tanky as Nevsky, and the worst thing about Arthur, he's very, very specific. He needs to be a secondary commander, and for that, you need a primary commander. Realistically, you need to have someone like a Hao Bing or a Nevsky at your disposal to run him at the full effectiveness, or have a Subutai to run him as a primary commander. So generally, Arthur Pendragon can actually be quite a poor commander on the open field if you don't have the proper pairings, because you can't run him as a primary unless you've got perfect armament. Most new players are not going to be running combo damage, so you can't really use him in that situation as a primary. Now, obviously, with commander swap, you can generally pick up a Nevsky and get him to a certain skill level, or pick up a Hao Bing and get him to a certain skill level. Then the question becomes, do you expertise Arthur, or do you expertise his primary commander? Now, Arthur, I think, is a very good open field commander. He just does have that lacking regard of being a kind of weak primary commander. Now, in terms of the best pairings, we're going to start off with Nevsky's best pairings. First of all, his best pairing is probably with Arthur Pendragon. I think that's quite open. One other pairing that's really good, obviously, is with Joan. Nevsky's two best pairings are easily Joan or Arthur Pendragon. They're both powerful AoE secondary commanders. Nevsky is a powerful single-target primary commander. So generally, that's going to be his two best pairings. But because I said before, he's very versatile, you can put Nevsky with pretty much any of the commanders that I am clicking on right now, and it's going to be a relatively decent march. Now, some of the commanders, obviously, like Saladin and Minamoto, not too overpowered, but you can get away with running them with Nevsky purely because of how open-ended he is and how much he can just kind of carry the one march that he's paired with. So Nevsky in that regard can be very nice. The fact that he's super broad and open is good for newer murder balls or players who have kind of just hit Season 3. In terms of Arthur Pendragon's best pairings, we're really looking at Hao Bing or Nevsky. That's really his only two, or Subutai if you're going for the combo attack damage. Generally, Hao Bing is kind of regarded as the overall better open field pairing, probably because of his faster rage cycle, which means you get more AoE and you can pretty much benefit from more of Arthur Pendragon's kit in a shorter space of time. So that is nice, but keep in mind Hao Bing can be kind of squishy, and this does make a bit of a glass cannon march, with Arthur Pendragon's best thing being 30 or 20% health, and while that is still very good, it is considerably below Nevsky, and Hao Bing's tankiness amounting to just about nothing. So when it comes down to it, you're looking kind of at a short, punchy open field march there with Hao Bing, and while it is a good pairing, you should note it's going to be kind of squishy, while his other pairing would be with Nevsky, and it's a bit more well-rounded in my opinion, and the march that I would personally run if I was using a Arthur Pendragon, just because it's more well-rounded, and you've got access to more overall stats, and you get a nice debuff as well. So overall, I like Nevsky, or I like Hao Bing with Arthur Pendragon, or if you're wanting to run a combo march, you can definitely kind of get away with Subutai, not the most OP for the field, but he probably is a better option for that combo damage. So now this brings us on to the final answer. Who is the better commander for who, and when would you pick them up? And we'll start off with why Nevsky could be better for someone. The first thing that Nevsky really does well, we said, was his versatility. So if you're really, really new to Season 3 and you might be investing down a different pathway, there's a possibility that Nevsky could be a better first pickup because he can work very well with a lot of other commanders. If you expertise a lot of older commanders, for example Saladin, Minamoto, if you've expertise, especially if you've expertise Minamoto, or if you've expertise other commanders more recently like Zhang Yu or William, Nevsky is going to be the better choice in that situation. I think generally if you've just hit Season 3 and you can only swap, or you're trying to swap only one commander, maybe you're going to swap something different, like let's say you're going to run an archer march and a cavalry march, and you can only afford one cavalry commander, and you've expertise to Minamoto, I see Nevsky as being the better option there. Because you have access to Minamoto, Nevsky with Minamoto, while it's not absolutely meta nowadays, is going to be relatively usable in Season 3, and you can get away with it as your initial march, while you wait to invest in someone like an Arthur Pendragon. Because Arthur and Nevsky are both really good commanders, it kind of just comes down to who you pick up first, and generally, if you've got a Minamoto, I recommend picking up Nevsky first, because you can't commander swap Minamoto since he is a commander you purchase with money. So Nevsky, in terms of using him with Minamoto, is a better first pickup, while maybe you work on something like an infantry or an archer march, and then you come back later and you expertise Arthur Pendragon to replace that Minamoto. So if you're looking for a first pickup and you can only afford to do one cavalry commander and you're doing another troop type as well, getting Nevsky as the first pickup and putting him with Mina is a very good option, because Minamoto with Arthur Pendragon is not very meta and isn't too good. In terms of Arthur Pendragon's use cases, majority of players you're going to want to go with Arthur first. He's a better pickup in terms of his overall utility, in terms of the damage he brings, and that's going to make him really good on the open field. Arthur's also way more new, so he's a better investment than Nevsky, which is nice, especially for players who've just hit Season 3. You want to get the newest and most meta commanders that you can, because that means they're going to last even longer and bring you even more open field value, whereas Nevsky might only last another 2 years at the absolute maximum. So really, we're looking at Arthur Pendragon being the overall more favorable choice, especially if you have the option to get two commanders. If you can get one expertise commander and one commander for like 5551, you can do Nevsky to 5551 and go for Arthur Pendragon's expertise, because his expertise is more valuable. Or you can go with Hao Bing to 5551 if that's the march that you want, and then again still go with Arthur Pendragon's expertise, because it is a more valuable situation to be in. So Arthur Pendragon, in my opinion, if you can only choose one commander to expertise out of two cavalry commanders and you want to run a cav march when you first hit Season 3, it makes sense to get Arthur Pendragon first. He doesn't really have any murderable restrictions. You don't need to have a certain number of marches to benefit from him. Nevsky kind of does have that restriction. Even then, Hao Bing might be a better first pickup for someone who's just hit Season 3, because you can run Hao Bing with Arthur and you can get more value, since you don't have access to Nevsky's full debuff until you've got 3 marches, and Nevsky's arguably a better pairing with Joan Prime than Hao Bing is with Joan Prime. So later, you could do a Hao Bing with an Arthur Pendragon and a Nevsky with a Joan Prime and have a really good 2 Cav March murder ball that is going to be very nice. So generally, Arthur is a better first pickup, and then you can pick one of his 2 primary commanders depending on which pathway you want to go down, and you could be in a really solid position with a nice march in Season 3. Again, the only time I see Nevsky being more viable is if you pick up Minamoto, because Minamoto and his double relic is really good with Nevsky, and it can save you quite a few gold heads while you work on a second march, and it kind of lets you get a bit of a head start into Season 3, and then later you can just run a Nevsky with an Arthur, and while it might be slightly worse than Hao Bing, you get the value of running Nevsky with Minamoto really early into your Season 3 time. So Nevsky only better if you have a Minamoto. Arthur Pendragon is better if you are looking to run a Hao Bing or run a Nevsky with him. So overall, the consensus, Nevsky is not as good as Arthur Pendragon in terms of a first investment for most players. Now, Nevsky is by no means a bad commander. Arthur is by no means a bad commander. These are both 2 meta cavalry. It just comes down to which one do I recommend picking up first, and in my opinion, it comes down to Arthur Pendragon. Now, if you did enjoy today's video, or you found it kind of useful or helpful, or you just found me fun or entertaining, please do consider subscribing to the channel. I try to make up-to-date content as often as I can for a lot of new commanders, and I like to do these comparisons between the old meta commanders to the new released commanders to see who might be better. So if you found that concept helpful or useful, please do consider subscribing to the channel. It really does help me, and it is much appreciated. Other than that, I just want to say I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.